Francois Nortje is the developer of the Port of Gauteng, and our go-to guy anytime we want to find out about Transnet. And my goodness, hasn't Transnet just been in the news? In this episode of Undictated, we're going to pick up from the resignation stroke firing last week of the chief executive of Transnet, Portia Derby. She's not too long after a new chairman, Untitled, took over at Transnet. He replaced Louis von Ziener. I don't know if there's any relevance in that, but Andile was the former head of Anglo-American South Africa, so he's a business guy with plenty of management experience. What is weird, really weird, is that both Portia Derby and her ex-husband, Brian Molefe, were both chief executives of Transnet. They both came from outside of the industry with zero knowledge of the whole rail and port operations, but they were both very deeply embedded in the ANC. I guess the Democratic Alliance is really trying to get hold of those insights onto the ANC's cadre deployment strategies, because if there ever was a point of someone landing in a cushy job out of their depth, this seems to be one of them. In 2022, because that's the latest annual report that we've got, Portia Derby was paid 8.5 million rands, more than double what her replacement, or temporary replacement anyway, Michelle Phillips, was paid, 4.2 million rand. What is interesting there as well is that of the 20 executives at Transnet who are listed in the annual report, between them they got 86 million rand. Michelle was one of the lower paid of them. There are 9 members of that 20 group that actually earn more than her, so you've got to wonder why she was the one, the chief executive of Transnet Pipelines, who was put into the position until the next chief executive comes along. So in Undictated, it's all about getting context. Francois Nortje has asked not to talk about the management changes, and that's cool, Francois. I understand there seems to be a heck of a lot going on there. You did give some praise to the Transnet management when we spoke a little while ago on the introduction of ICTSI from the Philippines to run part of the Durban port. You thought that was a really good move. When I put that to Melanie Van Ness, who is the chair of the Associated Chamber of Commerce, she says, yeah, fine, but it's a very small part of all of Transnet, and actually you needed to do a lot more than just fiddling at the edges. You've been following this for a long time, perhaps just for context as well, for those who don't know what you do. You're the developer of Port of Gauteng, which is quite reliant on a efficient Transnet, I guess, into the future.
Yes and no. We're at the entry point of Gauteng. If Transnet doesn't rail, everything will come by road, and we sit between the railway line and the road. We bought the land where the container corridor and the N3 are very close to each other and are running parallel. But for the sake of the country, we cannot just have the N3. It's too risky. It's just you cannot have all your containers coming from Durban Harbour into Gauteng to Lubumbashi just on the N3. So rail needs to work at some stage. And if rail work, we will make more money. So it's a big part of our thing, but it's not just because the stuff needs to get to Gauteng. And we at the entry point. The word port actually derives from the Afrikaans poort. When I explained it to my mother one day, and I said, it's the port in Gauteng, and that's when we got to the word, use the word Port of Gauteng. But it will work so much better if rail can work. I drove up yesterday from Nottingham Road to Joburg. The amount of trucks on a Wednesday that's on that road, it's just, and the amount of trucks that have grown over the last few years. There's a company, Prologis, in America. They're the biggest warehouse company. They've issued a study that they've done over the last 10 years. And to do the same R1 billion turnover of retail sales, you now need 57% more warehousing than you did in 10 years ago, because things got cheaper. it's e-commerce, whatever. But the fact that we just concentrate on the cheaper thing. So even if the turnover of a company like Game or Clicks or whatever stays the same, they're selling more product. So there's more trucks on the road. And it surely can't just be the N3. Therefore, if the rail works, we'll be better off, but it's not our whole business that depends on rail.
So you've followed Transnet very closely. You've explained to us the vested interest that you have in it. But when Melanie Vaness told us her view, and she called for the firing of the whole board and the whole executive team, and, well, she's had at least one of the people that have gone, she stopped just short of saying this was a shit show. Are there any redeeming factors that we can take from Transnet? Because it appears as though it's just in a downward, maybe a death spiral.
Let's just step back. Where I agree with Melanie. I was very happy about the Philippine guys. But remember, I've been on your show a few times, and one of the shows I said they should be broken into 12 to 20 companies. They must repeat what's happened in Durban Harbour 12 to 20 times. That is when the problem will be solved. That is the crux. She's 100% correct. I'm happy that happened, but it is just a small part. But they need to break the rail into the 4 or 5 corridors, separate the infrastructure operator from the fleet operators. They need to break Durban Harbour and get 2 or 3 operators into Durban Harbour, different one for Nuka, different one for Cape Town, different one for the pipeline, that it becomes manageable businesses where there's shareholder money in, not the government shareholder, real shareholders that goes to AGMs, where management has got share options or shares vested, like if you run a Naspers or a Bidvest, well, you got skin in the game. And then if you got 10 or 20 of these logistics companies, it will bring new blood into the country, it will bring new investment into the country, it will create competition. So they need to replicate what's happened on Pier 2 in Durban right through the Transnet system. It's like Transnet is like electronics that are wired in series. 50 batteries or 20 big batteries in series. It doesn't work. The resistance built up too much. There's just too many levels and nobody will. It's like if electronics gives you, and I'm not an electronic expert, but I understand that then you need to wire it in parallel. The resistance come down. You got workable chunks. And that's the problem at the moment. It's a 55,000 employee conglomerate. And I don't think anybody can run it. So you ask if there's a death spiral, it might very well be in a death spiral, because there was big mistakes made over many years. The problems didn't only start when Portia Derby took over. The balance sheet got blown out before she took over. And there, I blame some of these academics. I know some people might be very upset now. Some of these academics that now criticize Portia Derby were very involved in 2008, 2012, writing massive business plans for Transnet, showing 8% a year growth on containers. And they had a strategy, market demand strategy. Let's build it. The demand will come. So the strategy before Portia broke the balance sheet. And a lot of academics were part of that. Now those academics are criticizing Portia. And they're very chip still about their effort in building or breaking the balance sheet of Transnet and making it out if Transnet can do everything. So this is not somebody that had a heart attack. He's got diabetes, it's a heart attack, and he's got cancer. And now somebody is criticizing this current disease. But they were the one that made sure that the company was 100% obese, 100% over indebted. So it's got a problem, Alec. It's not a simple process to run. And therefore, that's why I don't want to talk to management, because it's not just Portia Derby. It's the three sets of management before, from 2009. And then also the police service failed them. The copper theft, I spoke to you about it, that I think the first interview about it, it's organized crime. And Transnet was slow about it. and how to deal with organized crime. But firstly, it's the police function in this country. So there's external factors. One, context matters. Context is actually the most important thing. Constitutional Court judges ruled on that. And it's to operate in a criminal state where they steal your copper cables all the time. It's very difficult.
Really good stuff that you've done there and really providing excellent context. Portia Derby, despite her poor choice in husbands, is somebody who does come with a good pedigree. But I think from what you're telling us now, it doesn't matter who they'd appointed into that post. It was a hospital pass. It was impossible, because I guess, doesn't that kind of get down to the core of everything of this ANC government, which loves controlling things? It loves to have the control in the center. And even now, the communist Pravin Gordhan, his natural instinct, and he's in his 70s, he's not going to change into understanding the market economy now. His natural instinct is, let's put another chief executive there who is going to be better than Portia. But from what I'm hearing, that's not going to fix things.
One was horses for courses. When Pravin was at SARS, he was brilliant, because that is an organization that must be wired in series. It's a government enforcement agency. SARS can't be run in parallel. SARS must be run in series. And he made a fantastic success of it, because that's his nature, and that's how he was brained. His brain function was formed, being communist, Soviet bloc thing, and he made a massive success of SARS, and we must thank him for it. This country would have been in a bigger problem than it would have been if he didn't run SARS and got the tax collection correctly. But you cannot do what you do in a police service and in an education discipline school and in a SARS in a multidisciplinary business. Some you slice this way and some you slice that way. And it's the wisdom to know to stand back and realize, when you do. When we were young, there was a guy we grew up with. He says, if you struggle, you don't know the trick. As we were talking, we were struggling to get a rubber band into a fridge to seal a fridge again. And we were all pulling, young, strong oakies think we're going to pull this thing. And he just laughed at us. They went and get a jar of Vaseline. He put the Vaseline on the structure of the fridge. There the rubber slips over the edge. And you can put in as much power. There's a trick to it. And that's what hopefully these guys will understand now. And I know that they're scared of big business abusing, but therefore cut it into enough pieces and let them on the competition authority work properly. And then that's the solution. That's what and then you still need good management. So don't say then you can put anybody in place and it will work. But at the moment, you can put as much management in you. It's too big. It's too unwilling. It's too big to manage, but it's too big to fail. The country will so much suffer. So we need really, and I hope they're listening and they take it serious, we need a fundamental, it needs to be like the shoes being on the wrong foot. You can work on that shoe as much as you want. But the moment you change the shoe to the right foot, everything changes. We need a change of, it needs to be wired in parallel and not in series. That's the best way I can explain that.
I love the example that you've given there. And we've also got a real life example of Eskom. When Eskom was totally dominant and did not allow the private sector to get involved, we just went into a death spiral in this country. You cannot operate a modern economy without electricity. The minute that they were forced into allowing the private sector to come to the party, it's only 2.5 years ago, the transformation has been unbelievable. The guys who put my solar into my home alone, Go Solar, will be putting in as many as 600 megawatts of power, just one company, into the system over the next year or so. And the imports of solar panels are the highest in the world at the moment. They've shot through the roof. The private sector is coming to the party in a huge way. This government obsession in having to control everything is really not fit for a complex world that we live in today. But how does that message, how does the penny drop on Transnet? The penny dropped on Eskom because the country said, we're not prepared to not have electricity. On Transnet, it's a little more insidious. Although 2/3 of our economy is based on either imports or exports, it's a far away from me not seeing or maybe paying a little bit more for it because Transnet is bad, or, as you say, driving from Johannesburg to Durban and getting lots of trucks in the road. How does that message, the Eskom message, the message that you've given now of cutting up this thing into many parts, how does that get through to those who don't want to hear it?
The budget. When we were in COVID, a mate of mine was so scared about the country and thinking it was relax. I must just relax. The farmers make so much money now. The miners make so much money now. When a rand drops or currency drops, there's counterweight. But the rand can drop. You can't export more if Transnet doesn't work. And that's the Chamber of Mines or some study group has already shown per quarter. In one of the quarters, we had 79 billion rand in company tax. And this last quarter, it's 12 billion. So that's where they'll feel it. The medium-term budget review, that's why the government bonds are at 13%. I don't like to use the word bond vigilante because then I sound like Noel Rabini, that very doomsday economist that used to be at New York University. But they're pricing in the bonds that the government are going to have to borrow more, and that the government, the risk of owning a South African bond is more because we're not going to collect the tax that we collect. And where you're going to feel it is when the farmers and the miners start laying off people. And you've got unemployment in Limpopo because they can't export the oranges, so they're not using so much seasonal workers. You've got extra unemployment in the coal belt because they cannot get the coal out. And so you don't feel it like load shedding. So it's a delayed effect, but it's going to hit them in their budget, and it's actually got more serious consequences. Because with load shedding, me and you adapt. Government can't adapt if they've lost 10% of their income. I don't know how they're going to balance their books. And hopefully there's a saying, nothing like a cash flow crisis to focus your mind. Hopefully this cash flow crisis focused their mind correctly. But what we need to understand, some things depending on how you want your government structure. A government still must run the police force, tax collection agency and stuff like that. So the agency the government has to run is the police force. That they can't run properly. But they want to run the businesses. Please, I'm asking this government, go and run the things you have to run properly first. You're not even running the police. I can't be a police. Police, it's a state certificate. Law and order, regulation, compliance is government function. That they can't do. There's not enough veterinarian vaccines for horse sickness, for all kinds of things, because the state veterinarians at Onderstepoort are battling. The stuff the government do, and only them can do, they can't even do properly. Now they want to run our electricity grid, they want to run our transport grid, and I understand that they're scared of big companies dominating. But break them up in enough. If there was 20 companies generating electricity in South Africa, and one put in a rogue or a director, an MD that's not good, that company folds. The country doesn't fold. And when I listened to Andre de Ruyter in his last speeches and whatever, or public talks, when he was still the MD of Eskom, he explained how the structure failed at Eskom when the new board came in and things like that. And that's what showed me that whole electricity grid in South Africa, or electricity supply, basically revolved around 3 or 4 key guys at Eskom, the MD and 2 oats about it, and the chairman of the board. And it shouldn't be, because what if they make the wrong decision? It's too risky to put the whole country's electricity in the hands of 5 or 6 people. Break it up into 20 people. If 2 of those companies go bankrupt because they've appointed the wrong executives, the others will make up the slack. And that's what we need. We need more private companies that compete with each other, supplying electricity and transport. And the government needs to do what the government needs to do: regulation, keeping the people safe, keeping law and order, protecting the copper cables from stealing. So we need a rehashing of our government function. Changing Portia Derby's position with another person, it's not going to make any difference.
Francois Nortje is the developer of the Port of Gauteng. And before we go, just to reiterate what he said, in the 2022 annual report, Transnet had 68 billion rand in revenue. Of that, 17%, call it 12 billion rand, came from the coal line, 21% from the iron ore and manganese line, that's 14 billion rand. Steel and cement, 5 billion rand. Freight rail overall was 54%. If you break that up, well, you got yourself some seriously sized businesses anyway, without having to have this enormous operation, which I guess you could say, Francois, is just too big to run.
That's it. And it's too big to fail, to bring the country down. So we better break it down into smaller, manageable components ASAP.
Francois Nortje, the developer of the Port of Gauteng, thanks for providing context in this episode of Undictated. I'm Alec Hogg from BizNews.com.